It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. We have Stephen P. Buckley, who is a Senior Digital Credential Strategist at Accredible. Stephen, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Steve. Really nice to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So we're going to be talking about how you drive enrollment growth through using digital credentials. Before we start, I'm just going to say a few words about Accredible. Many of you will know Accredible. We're the #1 trusted credential platform, but some of you might not. Over the last 10 years, we've issued over 80 million credentials. We serve over 2,000 organizations across the world. And you can see at the bottom there, here are some of our customers and the household names, you'll recognize them. So we're really proud of our platform. It's highly automated, it's really powerful, and best of all, it's really easy to use. So that is the end of the commercial, no more commercials. We're going to talk about higher education, right? Now, I'm not going to tell you what the problems are in higher education, right? You guys know, you do this every day. But what is quite obvious, even if you're not involved in higher education, is that the ongoing viability and success of colleges and universities in places like the US and the UK is going to be really driven by your ability to keep growing your programs and keep your learners engaged. I did a little bit of cursory research into some of the issues and things you face. One of the eye-watering stats is the thing about 39 million Americans who go to college never get a degree, and that's really quite a startling statistic. And I know that here in the UK, I watch the television, I read the news, we have our own challenges, so we are not perfect at all. So what I'm going to do today is bring a little bit of an outsider's perspective to things. I'm going to give you some challenges and some ideas, and hopefully you'll find those useful and sort of practical things that you can use. As Steve says, there's lots of opportunity to ask questions. Please feel free to put questions in the chat, and we'll pick those up at the end. So let's get started. These days, we've got lots of pressing problems and lots of issues. We really haven't got a lot of time for nice to haves. So what we really need is some practical things that we can use. So today we're going to talk about how you can use credentials in your programs and where should you start. What are the best practices that will perhaps make your program a success and avoid doing some of the things that will give you lots of unnecessary work. So that's the sort of the things we're going to cover in this webinar. So before we start, let's talk about what is a digital credential. Now, some of you will know what a digital credential is, and some of you won't. So let's just take 2 minutes and talk about that. So the easiest way to think about it is if you think about a digital photo, right? So one you take on a camera or on your phone, right? So you get an image, and then associated with that image, you'll see where you took the picture, the location, you'll see the date, you'll see the time, you might see the model of the camera or the model of the phone. And that data is what we call metadata. Now, a digital credential is very much the same thing. You get an image, so the emblem or the certificate, and associated with that is some metadata. So if you click on the badge or the certificate, like the ones we've got on the screen, right, you will see the name of the certificate, you will see the description, you will see the criteria, and you'll see the details of the person who actually earned it. And these credentials can either be certificates or badges, and you can see the examples on here. And the key thing to remember is these are digital, right? So essentially, they're a URL. They're a gateway into your world, the issuer's world, they're a gateway into it. So people click on it and they go into your world. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So why should you be interested in credentials? Okay, so I started work with digital credentials in 2015. And in sort of 2016, 2017, we did some research, and this was when I was working at IBM. And we did some research, and the research is really quite powerful, and it's quite simple. What the research said was, if you have a credential associated with a learning program, that learning program will get more people enrolled in it. So you'll get more people enrolled, more people will complete the program, more people will do the exam if there is an associated exam, and more people will come back and enroll for more education. So those findings, we can argue about the percentages and all that sort of stuff, but talking to colleagues, talking to other experts in digital credentials, those findings still stand. It's still true. So the question is, how can we use those in higher ed to make it, to actually use those credentials to our benefit? Okay, so let's move on. So let's think about higher ed, and let's start with the big picture. So you've already got credentials because that's one of the reasons you exist, right? What the challenge is how do you bring those credentials into a digital world? And there are real benefits to doing that, which we're going to go into in detail. But as with all digitizations, it comes with a few challenges. So one of the things is that if you pull all your credentials into a digital form and they're all in one place, then if you've got any inconsistencies or things that don't look the same, those sort of things become very evident in a digital world. I mean, it's not a problem, but you need to be aware of that. One of the other challenges is that if you've got all your credentials in one place, your risk profile, the risk of somebody using fraudulent credentials, increases. It's not impossible to manage, but you just need to be aware of it. And you'll get concerns. So people will start to talk about, oh, this is ridiculous. They'll say things like, this is ridiculous. We're going to have badges on everything. It'll be like, people say, oh, it'll be like a sweetie shop. There'll be badging on everything. It's ridiculous. We can't do this. And the reality is that people say this. People don't put credentials on everything. People think about credentials as something really important and not to be trivialized. So you'll hear that noise, but it's not reality. These sort of things you need to think about at an organizational level. It's also worth looking at and thinking about some of the big ticket items, and we've pulled a couple out here on screen. So let's talk about these. So taxonomy. So there's lots of different aspects involved in the taxonomy. But essentially, it's about what achievements you're actually going to recognize and how you're going to recognize them and what the look and feel is. So that taxonomy stuff is really important. The governance piece is equally important. So if you think about your credentials, they embody your institution's reputation and your brand out in the marketplace. So it's really, really important that they're consistent and high quality. Final thing is around the strategy. So you need to have a plan for how you're going to deploy your digital credentials and tackle some of the issues. So one of the things is what we call retroactive issuance. So you decide you're going to issue credentials for a particular program, and then somebody will say to you, well, what about last year's program? And then what about the one before that? What about 5 years? What about 10 years? What's your strategy on that? So you need to understand how you're going to deal with that. You also need to think about things like, for example, what's the deployment plan? What's your marketing plan before you launch, after you launch? All those aspects you need to think about. And ultimately, they're all about ensuring that our recipients, our learners, right, they're really motivated to adopt their badges and to share them and engage with them in a positive way. Now, the good news is we've done this sort of stuff with many organizations here at Accredible, so we can help you do that. But these are some of the sort of things you need to think about. So let's break down the challenge and get into a bit more detail. So why do students enroll at your institution? Why do they come to your college or university? Well, you guys know this. The students want a high quality education. They want it delivered by good, highly qualified, experienced staff. They want to benefit from all the latest research and thinking, and they want the opportunity to pursue other interests and passions and that sort of thing, so sports and that sort of stuff. The bottom line is they think and we believe that by coming to do your programs, it's going to enhance their prospects for their career and life going forward. So the challenge is, how can we make our institution more visible and more attractive to potential students and their advisors? So think about it. It's not just the students, it's their parents, it's the teachers, whoever. We want to influence that. How can we increase the number of qualified candidates enrolling in our programs? And when they've enrolled, how can we better engage those students so they complete the program, and ideally they excel in that program, right? So much so they're willing to, sort of stand on the top of the building and shout and say, this is fantastic, and come back and do more learning. So those are the sort of challenges we've got. And these are some of the things that credentials can help with. So if you think about your college, your university, your department, wherever you are on a day-to-day basis, it's a very rich and diverse place. And that's part of the reason why students choose to attend institutions in person rather than just do online learning. So there's lots of places, lots of things places or opportunities you can award people credentials. So the obvious ones are things like degree programs or your non-degree programs like your continuing education. Things like societies or volunteering internships or stuff where we've got recognition, there's prizes and awards. So those are the obvious things. But think about some of the less obvious things. So, you've got some fantastic staff. They do great research. They run seminars. They've written and developed fantastic publications. You host summer schools. You've got alumni who are really famous and well known. You've got, you make honorary degrees, honorary awards. There's partnerships with academic partnerships and non-academic partnerships. So there's lots of opportunities for using credentials. I mean, obviously, your program should reflect the sort of the size and nature of your institution. So if you're a big Ivy League university, your program is going to be different to a community college program. Not better, just different. And you need to think through that. So one of the questions is, where do you start? So I've just showed you all that sort of things. You can say, well, we could do all this. Where should I start, Steve? The temptation is to start small, something small and insignificant with no risk. So reduce the risk, right? Just don't start there, right? Start with a flagship program. Think about your campus. Think about the marketplace, right? What program have you got, or what small number of programs have you got? They've got a really good reputation. Everybody goes, oh yeah, if you want to learn about that, go there, right? Now, pick one of those programs, because what happens is each of those programs they'll have either a person or a small team of people who champion that program, who are really passionate and they care about that program and its reputation out in the marketplace. And that's a really good place to start, because it's highly likely if you put a credential with that program, it's going to be successful, right? Because people are going to value it, people are going to share it. So it's highly likely that that's going to be successful. So that's a good place to start. So let's dig into a little bit more detail. So how do credentials actually drive growth? So once a learner has earned a credential, what we do is we encourage them to share their achievement on social media. And when they shared it, somebody will see it and they'll either like it or they'll think, what's this then? And they'll click on that credential. And remember, it's basically an image with a URL in it, baked into it. So when they click on it, the person will go through to a credential landing page. And that shows the person will say, oh, this is really interesting. This is what the person did to earn that credential. And they might think, how can I earn that credential? And that creates a loop that drives more learners to your program. So it's a really simple interaction model, but really powerful. So when we talk about earners sharing their credentials on social media, what does successful sharing look like? Well, here on the left, you can see an example. So one of our team members at Accredible earned a credential and they shared it on LinkedIn. And look at the engagement they got. So it allows you to share credentials to over 20 social networks, right? Some of them you'll never heard of, I haven't heard of, but 20 social networks. Really easy to do. I can do it. It's straightforward. And we know that social media engagement is a really powerful tool to influence buyers. So this is one person sharing one credential. So how many credentials do you think you're going to issue, and what's the potential impact on that? It's really quite a powerful model. So when we talk about credentials, when people click on a credential, they go to a landing page. A landing page looks a bit like this. So you'll see more detail on this, but essentially on this landing page, you'll see, here's a certificate, here's a badge. The credential's got both. And what you will see is, you'll see the person's name on it, but you'll also see links to other pages. So you can look at here and you'll be able to see how you earn this credential, how do I find out more about this college or this university? And the idea is, what you want to do is draw people into your world, right? Into your ecosystem. That's what you want to do. You want them to click on one of those so they find out more. Now, out of the box, Accredible has got really nice, easy to use landing pages, right? But they're branded Accredible. But you can brand them however you want. Now, what I'm going to do now is show you an example. And you might say this is a bit extreme. So this is one of our customers, Black Hat. They are a cybersecurity company, and they've got a very distinctive branding. I think it looks really cool. The serious point here is that if you're working on having a seamless journey for your learners, then what you can do is you can use the what's called white labeling on Accredible to actually make sure that your credential pages, your credential landing page and things all look and feel the same. So it's pretty seamless integration. Really powerful. I've talked a little bit about data, but let's talk a little bit more about data. So the good news is, right, you don't have to do surveys, you don't have to do questionnaires. Thank goodness we don't have to do that sort of stuff. The credential data is all there, right? So every time somebody clicks on one of your credentials, right, it's logged and the data's there for you to see and analyze. And there's a dashboard, there's tools, and what it means is that you can easily measure your engagement, who's sharing what, who's noticing, all that sort of stuff. And one of the challenges with learning is return on investment. What you can do is you can associate value to each of those shares, and you can look at how that helps with your return on investment. You can also identify people who are key influencers and engage with them. So essentially what you can do is you can take action and you can measure the results. So it's a very dynamic, action-orientated world. And you can see the results in literally hours and days, not weeks and months, hours and days. So it's a really powerful, engaging model. One thing I just wanted to touch on, when we talked earlier about people who start a learning program and don't finish, one of the things we can do is we can use something called pathways. So credentialing programs platforms like Accredible allow you to set up pathways of credentials and non-credential materials, actually. And the idea here is it shows the learner what's required and how they work through the materials and the credentials. So the objective is to get everybody through the program. The next steps are obvious. And obviously what you get is you get all that motivation, that peer pressure. But the reality is you're always going to get some students who don't finish the learning program. Now, assuming that you've designed each of those credentials really well, because you want each credential, you want to be designed so it's a little nugget and people want to share each one and it's got value to the earner, then even if somebody doesn't complete the program, then they've got something of value. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 credentials which they can share on LinkedIn, on their resume or their CV. So it's really quite a powerful thing. Now, the things you're going to say to me is, so Steve, where can I start? So if you're from a department or a small institution and you've got a limited budget, where can you start? Well, here's a simple idea. So think about the end of this term or this semester, whatever you call it, right? If you're going to write a newsletter that went to students, that went to staff, to parents, alumni, what would be in it? What achievements would you report, celebrate? What prizes would have been won? What awards would have been made? Who was on the winning team? Who organised what event? Which ones do alumni talk about fondly? That sort of idea. Think about that. When you've got that, you've got literally what I would say is, your credential pipeline. And then there's 3 simple things you're going to do, and the links will be on the screen in a minute. So 3 simple things to do is download our guide to digital credentials in higher education. There's a 4-minute video of how to use our platform, and you can have a free trial. You sign up for a free trial with our platform. Really easy to use, nice to do. So what you can do is go and try this out, right? So you've listened to me, go and try it, see what it is, pick one of those opportunities that we talked about, and try it out in your community and see what works for you. So I hope I've inspired you to consider using credentials in your college or university. I hope we got some interesting questions here, and thank you very much for listening. So back to you, Steve.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you, Steve. So now we've come to the live Q&A portion of our UB Ed Talk today. So we do have a few questions that came in. The first one, so this person, they're asking what they can tell their team, about the extra advantage of a digital credential platform like Accredible, and do that versus PDFs or using a feature already in your LMS.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I did a training course from Microsoft last week. Excellent course. If you want to learn about AI, the Microsoft one was really good. And it said at the end of it, download your digital badge. I downloaded it, and it was just a sticker. So it's why I call it a sticker. So it was a nice limit, but when you clicked on it, it didn't go anywhere. So if people wanted to see what I'd done, they couldn't see it. And more importantly, and we've not talked about this, is verification. So when you issue one of our credentials, when you post it, if somebody goes to it, they can press a button and say, did Steve really do that course on AI? And the platform will tell you back, will tell you, yes, he did. And that's why it's a real advantage to have a proper digital credential as opposed to a PDF.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question that came in. Do you have to have an LMS to use Accredible?
No. If you've got an LMS, right, then essentially the way Accredible and the other credential platforms work is when somebody finishes a learning program, at the end of it, when they successfully passed it, then the LMS system basically fires a transaction through to and says, issue this person with a credential. But lots of people they'll actually have a spreadsheet and they'll load that spreadsheet up and that issues the credentials. So there's different ways of doing it.
Perfect. This person is asking the question that came in. So within a university, have you noticed, will the faculty typically feel that credentialing programs will cannibalize degree learning? Is that something that you've experienced, or?
No, I think you can use digital credentials for your degree programs. You can use them for continuing ed. You can use them for the other stuff. The credential is just the credential. It doesn't. Yes, it drives behaviours, but it doesn't undermine the quality and the value of your underlying programs at all. In actual fact, I'd say it emphasises them.
Cool. And actually, I can probably ask this one other question, is because it's really brief. Okay. Does Accredible work with educational companies in addition to higher ed?
Yeah, we work with all sorts of, we've got over 2,000 customers. So if you think about it, we work with all sorts of other vendors and all sorts of other organizations. So we work with, yes, higher ed people, we work with associations, so professional associations, we work with people who sell products and their education. We've got a real variety of different customers. So the advantage with that is you get a good pollination of ideas and good ways of working from other places apart from just higher ed.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we are at the 30-minute mark here, so that's all we have time for our live Q&A. But first off, I want to thank you again, Stephen, for sharing your time and expertise with us today.
Pleasure.
We really
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, I want to thank Accredible as well. And with that said, I would like to take a minute to thank our audience for joining us here today. For those of you who enjoyed our presentation, or we have more UB Ed Talks like this one that are provided by University Business, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, as well as current issues in higher ed. We have a wide range of readers who subscribe for free to UB, such as yourselves, and they stay up to date with us online, newsletters, web seminars, and UB Ed Talks like this one. So with that, on behalf of UB, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks, everyone, and thank you again, Stephen and Accredible. This was great.